Well, it was originally, my family had an institute in St. Petersburg that they were working on a technology of EMF modulations. They never ever had a desire to create any type of product, any type of consumer product. It was a decade-old project where they were trying to come up and understand different ways how you can modulate electromagnetic field. The idea was to develop a technology and then perhaps present it to the military and specifically to the mobile air defense systems of the military, where these officers were serving on mobile radar stations. And the idea, clearly we could not do any type of EMF blocker or block electromagnetic radiation, because if you would do that, you would block the signal of the radar and the whole communication. So it had to be done in a way where there is no interference with the signal. And that's what my family was working on. I was not part of this development because I was living here in Canada. But my father and his team was working on this technology for about 10 years. I knew what they were doing in some details, but I wasn't really aware of, all the nitty-gritty and, things that they were like researching exactly. Until in 2012, I saw the issue of the EMF exposure and the electromagnetic radiation. Start looking deeply into it, read a few books about it, and then I started to really think about going to my father and asking him maybe I can grab this development, bring it to Canada, and roll it into some sort of a consumer product so people can benefit from this technology. So when I started the company in 2012 with these first products that were made, I quickly realized how the potential is huge, and I really wanted to get it out there to the hands of customers and spread it as fast as I can. And at that time I realized for me to do that I do need to use some sort of a public vehicle, some sort of financing backup, because just to tell the stories by itself takes a very long time and it's very expensive. So we decided to take the company public, and that's in 2016 I started really exploring the opportunities, and in 2017 I really started the process to take the company public. Through an IPO. And it's very important to understand we could take the company public using a RTO, like reverse takeover, which does not require any prospectus type or due diligence or a regulator being involved. But the bankers insist that since this technology was not originated in Canada originally, and all the research came outside of Canada at that time, they insist that we're gonna go through an IPO process where we're gonna put everything in the prospectus, and it's gonna go through these checks of the regulator, Ontario Security Commission in this case, had spent about 2 years asking questions. So when we initially submitted the first applications to go public with first version of our prospectus, we were sure that we're going to be listed in about 2 months. In reality, they came back to us with 150 questions. We start to answer them. We answer them, send it over. They came back with another 150 questions. And during that time, while answering the questions that they had for the technology, for all kind of things, we were submitting our research papers, and we clearly realized that they would not accept just a white paper, and we that time had to peer review them. So we had to take our research papers and send it somewhere to an organization that is independent to us, and a local organization, meaning a Canadian organization, that would look at the research and provide their opinion, which is basically a peer review. A peer review is an opinion. So we found an organization that agreed to look at all of this, and we submitted the research. They were looking and providing the reviews on the research during the 2 years period of this company going public. And as they were coming in, we were sending them with the research papers to the regulators for them to be satisfied. And then after 2 years of intense due diligence by the regulator, we received a so-called receipt, which is basically a permission to go public, file the prospectus and go raise money. And you would think that this is the end of the story and you go and you list your company and you become public, but that's not the case. Now you need to go to the banker, to the bank, and say, hey, because I can't raise the money by myself, I need a broker, I need a financial institution to raise the money. So we approached the financial institution. It's a big company, a big bank, Canaccord Genuity, huge bank. And we said to them, like, hey, we just submitted all the documentation to the regulator, for the stock exchange. There is a receipt. Please, do the financing for us, raise the funds. And they said, sure, but we need to do the due diligence on you, on the company, on the technology. I said, really? I said, but they just did here. And they said, no, that's their job to do their own due diligence. We have to do ours. And the way the bankers work, they have, because the banker itself, the broker that did the financing for our company, he doesn't have any scientific background, nor he understands physics or anything like that. It's not his expertise. So for that, banks, they have analytics in every industry. And they allocated a tech analytic that works for that bank. And that tech analytic requested all the research papers. At that time, we already had stuff that were peer-reviewed by this organization in Ottawa. He started to ask also all kind of questions, did site visits, did interviews and review everything, and he concluded that we definitely have something here, but he cannot explain and provide a recommendation just for a lack of knowledge of this specific sphere, because it didn't fit into his quite fit into his knowledge. So the solution was for the bank to find an expert outside of the bank now. They have started to look around who can provide the feedback for the bankers. So that was a relationship of the bankers. So I was not involved in this process at all. So they identified a couple of experts, but they choose specifically one from Berkeley University, a professor in biophysics. That professor, and there was an NDA signed between all parties, so I don't know if I can disclose names. Maybe I can, but I'm just not sure if I can. So that professor from Berkeley University was engaged by Canaccord to provide the bankers an opinion on the technology, so they can decide whether they like it, whether it fits their standards, and whether they want to go and invest in this company with this product, with our product and the technology. It took additional 4 months, so it's been 2 years of due diligence of the Security Commission, and probably a couple of months by the analytic from the bank, and then another 4 months to provide an opinion on the technology and on the product. As far as I know, it was reviewed by the committee of these bankers, and as far as I know, and I've been told by the broker, that 6 people out of 6 liked it, and they voted to take this company public. The reason it's important to tell this story is that any company can create a product and go to the market directly. In our case, we did that, and we went through extreme amount of due diligence by a government organization, by the stock exchange, by the bankers, and by independent experts. During that process, we had to peer review our research because it was important and submit for publications, and now we do have published peer review research papers as well. What's also important to understand in academical world, the way it works, so obviously someone needs to fund the research. So we as a company funded our research at the beginning, and we received the results, and though this was not our laboratories nor it was our institutions and universities, we still paid for this research. So once we received the results, in academical world it's kind of good, but it's not good enough. The next step is to peer review them. So you do need to submit those research papers to another organization. So you would identify a scientist in this field, you would approach them and say, hey, we conducted this research, please provide an opinion. So when you doing a peer review, you're receiving an opinion on your research back. So we had submitted 9 scientifically significant research papers for peer review, and they have peer reviewed them and provided the feedback, which was extremely positive. It's published on our website. So now you kind of have a research that you paid for, where you received just a white paper. Then you took that white paper and you peer review it, so now you have peer reviewed white paper, and it's now a lot better than just a white paper by itself. But the final stage is now, ideally, you want to take these research papers and submit it to, say, a scientific journal for them to publish it. When you submit a peer-reviewed research paper to be published, the publisher most of the time will do another set of review. So now if you submit it to a journal, The Science, for example, they're gonna have their own researchers. Despite the fact you already peer-reviewed it, now they're going to send it to another set of 4 eyes, at least, to independent 4 eyes, to look at what the research is. If they like it, they will publish it. And once you have published research papers, that's considered Bible, pretty much, in a scientific community. And this process is very long. So from submitting a research, doing a research is long. Getting results for the research is long. Then peer reviewing the research is long. So we're now talking about like 4 or 5 years until the moment we submit. And once we submit it, so for example, we have a peer-reviewed published research papers in the Springer Link, it's an academical journal. We submitted the report research papers in 2019. We received publication in 2022. So now there is a peer-reviewed research paper that was peer-reviewed by an organization that I have approached, and then it was additionally reviewed by the Springer Link as well. And if you follow the link and go to that publication, you will see the auditors' names. So there are 4 professors that we don't know them, we never met them, we don't know who they are. 2 from London, different universities, and 2 from India, different universities. So that research is published right now. So now we do have tremendous amount of white papers. I think we have more than 80 research papers. We have 9 scientifically significant research papers that were peer-reviewed, and 1 research paper that was peer-reviewed and published. And there are more coming. There are a couple of more in the pipeline. But as I said, this process does require time, and it takes 2 to 3 years from submission to publication. During the process of going public, through their due diligence, being accepted by the regulator and being approved by the stock exchange to list the company, then going through the banker, they did a whole set of their own due diligence within the company, within the bank, and then furthermore to an expert outside of organization, the professor from Berkeley University, to the peer reviews and publications, the amount of checks and eyes and impressions. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the original research came from Russian Federation. However, if you look at our research papers, there are more than 50 institutions and organizations and more than 100 people. We did a lot of research in Russia initially. That's where the technology was born. But we did also a lot of research in the European Union. We did scientifically significant research papers from Europe. We had done research in Canada. We have done a lot of stuff in the USA as well. There are a lot of stuff in the pipeline being done right now. It's a really common misconception for people to think that our product is an EMF blocker. In reality, it is not. AIRI started as a foundation working on an EMF modulation technology. It was never designed and intended to be a blocker. It carved in concrete throughout the research everywhere that we are not blocking EMF. So all our research is showing the effect on the physiological response of a human. Because the only adequate way to answer the question whether the technology or the product works or not is the physiological response of a human to the electromagnetic radiation of one type or another, with or without our product being installed or applied. So that's why we always going back to the physiological response. Due to the fact that many people think that this is an EMF blocker, they're trying to look at it and measure it with an EMF meter. When you're measuring with an EMF meter, you see no results because we have not blocked any radiation, any EMF. It's still present. Instead, the technology works based on a completely different principles. The only answer whether the technology works or not can be only shown on the physiological response of a human. And also it's important to understand, even if you do somehow block EMF from your cell phone, say, there are other sources of EMF in the environment, and in many cases they're more powerful than the one comes from your cell phone. So there is no point blocking an EMF of your cell phone. You are not solving any issues here, unless you're only having that cell phone and you're in the middle of nowhere. In AIRIS, we wanted to make the technology safe. So blocking EMF is not practical for many reasons. Number one, you have too many sources to block. Number two, we don't want to block anything because we love technology and we are using technology in our day-to-day life every single day. What we believe is that solving and reducing the negative effects of a human to the electromagnetic radiation is what's important. So we created a technology that reduces the negative effects of electromagnetic radiation. And all our research looks at the physiological response and not at an EMF meter, for example, because it's a big misconception. We have published all our research on the website for people to understand the technology. If you really wanted to get to the very important specifics of the technology, you need to start reading the research called the method. All other research papers out there, they're supporting that method research. So if you would read carefully the method itself, you would never show up with the EMF meter to test the product and validate whether it works or not.